Hey everyone, welcome to Read Watch Play. My name is Ian Savage of the NBS Podcast, and I'm joined this month by Josh Simpson, the co-host of the NBS Podcast. With
No,
me,
I'm just
of
the
course.
host of the podcast. You're just
He's the host, and I'm like the like bad comedian, sidekick, right?
I don't even want to give you that title. I feel like that's being too gracious, labeling yourself a comedian.
Right, that's true. I'm definitely not a
But no,
comedian.
I watched your little Weed Watch Play last month, and I thought, hey, that was kind of fun. You even got a couple comments on some of your reviews of your books and whatnot. So Ian kind of
Oh, I did. I haven't
politely,
seen if
as
I
in he
had any
begged me on
comments
his
on it.
hands and knees.
Oh my god.
You
I was
didn't see
begging.
that?
I was like, Josh, please.
But no, yeah, please just join this. It's just too lame without you. And I'm like, I know, man, I know. I guess I'll do it. Regardless. But here we are. So we should probably get down to brass tacks then.
Yeah. So like we like to start off with is what we're reading today. So I guess we'll just show our viewers right here. I'm watching. Josh, why don't you go ahead and show yours too, just for the sake.
I guess, but you're just like just this fluorescent white,
just
like you can't even see
yeah,
anything. Yeah,
gosh, it is like really bad. I didn't realize. Yeah, let me like if
yeah,
hopefully
it's
it's
bad.
not
Mine's
like
not. I don't think
yours is a lot better because
bad.
yours is a darker cover, huh? Yeah. So
Yep.
I'm
Nice
reading.
little thick boy there.
Oh, that is a thick boy. Yeah, this was a lot thinner. Well, I read 3 books this month, but I just wanted, to get a couple under my belt. So I was reading one of the books that I read was Notes from Underground from Fyodor Dostoevsky. It's a short book, maybe around, gosh, I'm looking here. It's probably less than 200 pages, about 130 pages. And it is a great little novella. Great translation as well. Josh, I don't know if you've read any Dostoevsky, but if you haven't, or for any of our viewers who haven't read Dostoevsky, I would highly recommend him. I hadn't read him before. My wife had continually recommended Dostoevsky. It's like, you need to read this guy. He's an excellent, excellent author. And I was sort of wanting to get into Russian literature anyway. And I was not disappointed at all. It's basically about this sort of, Josh will probably find this funny, but this guy who just like lives in a shitty little apartment in Moscow or St. Petersburg. And he's just resentful of everything. He's a total cynic. He thinks everybody is out to get him. I don't know if it reminds you of anybody. And
nobody comes to mind.
Nobody. But it's really interesting for a novella because the first half of it is more philosophy than anything. It's really this guy just writing in a notebook, like about how annoyed he is with the world and other people, and just going off on these philosophical riffs. Basically, it's just really interesting. And then the second half of it is like him recalling when he was about 20 years younger, about all these mishaps. Like he has these friends that he sort of hates, and he's trying to get them to hang out with him, but they don't really want to, and he doesn't want to. And then basically him wanting to like find love in this project, and you think that it's going to be like this nice moment, but he just totally fucks it up in the end. And it's just really, really pleasing to read, especially after last month finishing Dune from Frank Herbert. And I was actually pretty disappointed in that book. I don't know, Josh, if you've read Dune.
I've not been, and
yeah.
We dabbled again from my theater background. The Russian author we've read is Chekhov, Anton Chekhov. We did a lot of stuff for Chekhov. He was a Russian playwright. Chekhov is most famous for like if you bring something up in Act 1, it better be used in Act 3. Essentially, like when you're throwing line, Chekhov's gun is the famous thing that's done. So he's written some pretty interesting plays that deal with, and of course, like as Russians do, it's very dark and. They're known for their darkness and their dark humor. So,
I think it must have something to do with geography, right? Because Russia just seems like it's the most harshest environment to live in on Earth. Next to Antarctica or like somewhere in northern Alaska. So, Josh, what were you reading?
Well, mine's a little bit lighter. So this is actually was a gift from your wife, who has been pretty good about giving me good things to read. And this was kind of a while ago. It's taken me quite a bit to read this book, but it's I looked on this list the other day. It was like top 500 books you should read, and this definitely was on that list. A few other ones were on there as well, but it's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, a novel by Susanna Clarke, and it's basically about two magicians in the 1800s, and it's in London, set in England, and it's very much. I guess it's like comedic Downton Abbey. Like it's very much that feel of like the heightened like British high society and how funny it could be. And so, so it's very proper. And the only way I can describe it too is it's very, the way that she writes it, she has her own kind of like references and I don't know, Ian, if there's a term for this. I might be blanking on it here, but where you write fiction, but it's done to be like hyper realistic. You know what I mean? So it's a work of fiction,
sure. Yeah,
but it's like heightened fiction where it's written as if it was nonfiction. The book that comes to mind that I read in the past is World War Z. If you've read World War Z, I can't remember who the author was, but he wrote it as a series of interviews after the war. And he wrote it's all fictional, but he writes it as if it was actual history. And these were actual interviews from people. Mm-hmm. And so this right here is all about this fake magician life that is written, as if it was actually did exist. And it's kind of funny. And it's almost 900 pages. So it's quite the read, but it is very comical. But the only thing I will recommend is you have to like three things. You have to like magic, you have to like period pieces, and then you have to enjoy like highbrow British comedy. And if those three things check your box, then it would be a book for you. But if you don't like any of those things, then probably steer clear of it, I would say.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I would almost say the same thing. Like if you don't like existential angst and like hatred of everybody and cynicism, you might not like Notes from Underground. But other than that, I would definitely recommend it. So the next thing on our list here is what we've been watching, where we like to talk about films or TV. And I watched a few things this month. We finished the last season of The Crown, my wife and I, on Netflix, and it was pretty good. It was interesting seeing more of Gillian Anderson as Margaret Thatcher. Of course, she was less so in this season than she was the last season. It was just interesting seeing the drama fold out. Obviously, it's fictional. But it's been actually really interesting and seeing this season, especially with Princess Diana being portrayed. I can't remember the name of the actress's name. It's like something I won't even try to remember because I can't. But but it's really interesting actually because the royal family and their marketing team almost have been like pressuring the Netflix series and Netflix in general to put a disclaimer in front of the show to say that it's fiction based. And that, that's not really based in reality, even though, there is a lot of parts in it that are, it's just sort of funny to me that like, of course,
the characters themselves are historical figures, but
exactly.
Not like the story that's being
because
told,
like there are times, when there are, there's dialogue between characters that are, not in the public eye. So like, how would you know what these people are really conversating about? You can only imagine. So that's where the fiction element comes in from it. And so I just thought it was a little silly that, that the royal family is like requesting people to separate, to be able to have some type of, warning in the beginning. Is like, I don't know. I think people are smart enough to realize that it's fiction, but maybe some people aren't. So,
you know what, to be fair, Ian, I guess that is probably the most optimistic thing I've ever heard you say. So I'm not even going to,
right.
And unfortunately I don't share that same optimism, but you know what? I'm very optimistic in other aspects. And all I'm going to do now, instead of speaking, I'm just going to cheers to that optimism.
There you go. And I just have an energy drink, so I'll cheers to that. But a couple things I've been watching, actually, maybe I'll just speak to one. My wife and I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from Quentin Tarantino early this month. And it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, Tarantino, first of all, I'm glad filmmakers like him exist and make movies. I mean, he has honed his craft in such a way. And the film is great in a lot of ways because it's like sort of a Western, but it's also like, based in the 60s, like with Charles Manson stuff going on. And it's just so fantastic. And it's really meta about filmmaking and about his films in particular. Just excellent to watch, especially Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio are excellent in it. They work really well together. So yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of Tarantino, you've probably already seen this movie. But if not, I would. I
haven't though, and we were debating on possibly watching it here relatively soon. Looking at movies, we ended up on a movie last night that was rough. It was Replicas with Keanu Reeves. It's an HBO exclusive film.
Heard about that.
And we thought, Keanu Reeves, like, he's hit or miss, you know what I mean? But recently he's been doing a lot of good projects and he's such a great guy. So we're like, let's give it a shot. And it's such a choppy premise. I mean, and I don't want to give too much away, but like, it's a terrible HBO movie. So here we go. Spoiler alert, I guess. But the premise of the movie is like, you find out that he's like a scientist who's trying to import consciousness, biological consciousness, into a synthetic construct. And he's having trouble. doing so, and then he's all of a sudden he's just like driving on a camping trip with his family, and it's just torrential downpour, which always makes me laugh because there's like a dialogue where the son goes, Dad, can I ride a boat when we get to camp? And he's like, sure, son. And I'm just like, it's just like downpour rain. And
Gosh.
so he has like two daughters. An oldest is the daughter, and then the youngest is the daughter, and then his son is the middle child. Well, they get in a car crash, his whole family dies, and instead of like reporting it, he just calls his assistant over, copies their biological brain, and he basically incubates clones and then imports the brains into the clones. And the funny thing is that like he only had like enough pods, so he had to he basically drew one out of his hat, and he decided that one of his family members basically, and I'm not going to give away who it is. You'll get that when you watch the movie. But he picked one of his kids to not bring back because he didn't have enough pods to do so, and he instead just wiped the memory of that kid and his whole rest of his family.
Sounds fantastic. It really does. It really does.
The joke I'm going to make though is that the sad part is that the premise is actually not terrible. If it was done correctly, it was just lazy. They didn't really cover a lot of plot holes. The fact that he just deleted everybody, and they were like, yeah, but the child that he deleted still had a social security, still went to school. Like, how are you supposed to convince everybody? And then there's like one scene where they barely address that, where they were like, oh, you didn't call the clinic that your wife works for? Like, she's been gone for 5 days. Like, you didn't think? He's like, no, I didn't think to get a hold of anybody. And then, so it's just like, it's interesting. I mean, it's not a good movie. And, it's about, thankfully it was only about an hour and 38 minutes.
Oh, that's good. It wasn't a full 2 hours.
Yeah. No, but I would almost recommend people just to watch it just because of how funny it really is. It's hilariously inaccurate, but yep, that's really what I've been watching. And of course, garbage TV, but we don't want to talk about that. I'm on the final episode of iZombie. I just started that 5 series season.
Interesting.
So, the only cool thing about it is...
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, the only thing I'll say that's cool about it is like the lore behind it is that zombies actually are conscious if they eat, and then they only become feral, like we understand zombies, if they go too long without eating, and then there's no way to get back. So once you go feral, you can never like gain consciousness again. And then their trope is that you take on the persona of the brain that you've eaten. So if you eat somebody's brain, you get their mannerisms, you get their desires, you get their likes, and then you have visions of like
their
what the person had went through. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Huh. Yeah. Well,
so as far as a sci-fi construct goes, that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I haven't heard of before. I think I've heard of the show. But as far as what's in it or going on, I don't know.
Well, you finished The Crown. Have you two watched any films besides Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Well, I did watch Wonder Woman 1984 the other day on Christmas Day when it dropped. And I think I told you off mic a little bit.
I've hered my grandmother didn't like it. There's a lot of people who are not fans of it, and I haven't seen it yet, but like I'm curious to know why it wasn't as well received.
It's just there's a lot of plot holes. There's things that happen that are just like, why is this happening? There's a whole the opening segment of it's like this flashback to when Diana was still a young child on Themyscira, and like there was this big like Amazonian Olympics that had no reason for being in the movie except for like there's this big theme of truth in the film, sort of. Hi, Dad. Oh, look.
Hey, buddy, good to see you.
This is my son. This is Wyatt. So hey, buddy, I'm gonna finish recording this. You want to say hi to everybody? Here, why don't we hang it down? You want to say hi to everyone? Yeah.
We're going to shamelessly use you for marketing.
Yeah.
Good to see you, baby Wyatt.
Yeah. All right.
He's getting so big, man.
Yeah, he's absolutely huge. All right. Thank you, Wyatt. I'll be done in just a moment. Hey, you know what? This is a show where we get all sorts of surprises. Sometimes my son shows up. Sometimes Josh, tells me terrible stories. It's great. And
don't worry, my son's going to be walking through that door any minute.
Any minute, right? Yeah, your son. So we'll just ignore him. It's kind of like that. I don't know if you saw that famous news story where the guy was, he was all in a suit in his house, and he was, saying some story to some news outlet, and then his son walks away and he just shoves him out of the way. That's always funny. But no, Wonder Woman just. I don't know. Like I said, there was a lot of plot holes. There's scenes in there that aren't really relevant. They bring back God, Chris Pine's character. I can't remember his character's name. Was it Steve Trevor? My wife is also here. And they bring him back, and I won't give away how they bring him back, but there's really not a whole lot of reason for him being there except for some inner conflict with Wonder Woman. And there is this scene where he's flying because he's a pilot, and there's all these fireworks in it. And it's like, it's really cool spectacle, but it's for the 4th of July. And it's just like, oh, it's the 4th of July is going on with no ever previous mention of it. And it's just really strange in some of the reasoning behind scenes and why they're adding stuff. There's some great character moments between Chris Pine and Gal Gadot. I mean, they're both really great actors. Kristen Wiig is in it. She's amazing for the most part. And so is Pedro Pascal. Oh, that reminds me. Tell you what, I'll talk, aside from this one bad movie, I want to talk about The Mandalorian for a moment. I don't know if you've been watching it. We finished the last season.
Yep.
And let me just say spoilers, so Josh and I can talk about it for a moment. Thank George Lucas. Thank you, Dave Filoni. Thank you, Jon Favreau, for bringing back Boba Fett. That has been
not just that though. I mean, the one thing I will say about The Mandalorian is if you consider stuff now, I know sometimes like different demographics are difficult to digest, as in like going from like live action to cartoon. However, Dave Filoni is the creative mind behind Star Wars: The Clone Wars animated series,
right.
which the 7th season actually was released early of 2020.
That's right. I haven't gotten to that yet.
And it's amazing. So it's essentially the last season of the Clone Wars happens at the exact same time as the third film.
Revenge of the Sith, right?
Yeah. And so the prequels, the last prequel. And so it happens simultaneously at the same time. And so what Dave Filoni did is he filled in a lot of the gaps of the prequels and made them coherent, and he weaved stories within. And then he also did Star Wars Rebels, which is basically filling in the gaps, of kind of around just after Vader kind of comes into power and whatnot. And so you have all these different things going on. And then he, with Mandalorian, when Jon Favreau brought him on, all of these characters that you're now seeing they're being brought in, like, have to do with Clone Wars and they're intertwined into that. So if you really want to understand Mandalorian on such a deeper level, like, go back and watch Clone Wars and watch Star Wars Rebels, and you'll be like, your mind will be blown.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with bringing, Ahsoka Tano in, which is so cool. And then Bo-Katan.
Which George Lucas and Dave Filoni kind of like wrote that character together.
Right.
So that's kind of wild. Yeah, you're right. Bo-Katan is also a character in both Rebels and Clone Wars. They just did
so many great things. And Mandalorian, I think, is right now peak Star Wars for me. I mean, I'm just going to forget about the sequels as of now.
The meme that I love the most is it's like Leia and it says, "I love you." And then it's like on the bottom it shows, and it says, as Leia is Star Wars fans. And on the bottom it shows Han that says, "I know." And then it says Jon Favreau.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Jon Favreau. Is there anything else you were watching this month, Josh?
No, as far as that goes, I haven't really, I've just been more to the last part of what we're playing. I think I've been doing a lot more than that.
Yeah.
As far as iZombie and just the replicas that we watched last night, we're still trying to power through. And we were going to watch, it was actually kind of funny. It's kind of off topic, but we were going to watch Wonder Woman, and it said like Wonder Woman's on HBO Max or HBO Max. Yeah. And so we got HBO Max through Hulu, but then we found out that in order to watch Wonder Woman, you actually had to have got HBO Max through HBO Max. You couldn't have gotten it through a different streaming service.
Gotcha.
So that was kind of funny. But no, I'm actually serious to get into the play aspect of this, because I've been playing a very controversial game.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to talk about. And I know that you said you haven't been doing a lot of playing recently, but still. Well,
yeah, there's still a few things to talk about. Yeah, so our last segment that we do here on Read, Watch, Play is we talk about some video games that we play. Josh and I in particular are pretty big gaming nerds, I would say. We've been playing games for a long time. I even think back in high school, we had some Halo sessions together, which was always fun.
Back the old teabag days,
Right. Hey, you know what? In this game, I've gotten teabagged a few times, and I'm just like, whoa, how old are you? At least my age, which is sad. So I've been playing a lot of Hunt Showdown. Again, I've talked about that last month and probably previous months because I've just been playing a lot of it. not a whole lot of new things to report. It's a first-person shooter from Crytek, who made the Crysis game and Far Cry back in the day. They don't really make a whole lot. They're not super active, but they've been trying to keep up a player base for Hunt Showdown. They recently just had a Christmas event within the game, and it was super fun. You play through unlock points, and as you're getting the points, it was kind of fun. They had like little Christmas presents spread out throughout the maps. And so you had to crush the Christmas presents in order to get points. And then you just automatically unlock stuff like weapons and items and skins and stuff. I wasn't able to get them all because I had it was Christmas time. So I didn't have that much free time, but that game's been fun. I did at the beginning of the month, play a little bit more of the Elder Scrolls 5 on Skyrim. And that's always fun to go back to. It's a little bit of a time sink, as I'm sure Josh is aware of that as well. Mm-hmm. And probably most of our listeners, everybody knows Skyrim by now. But yeah, I haven't been playing a whole lot. I'm looking forward actually. Right now, Bloodborne has been sort of a little bit more active on PS4. And so I'm probably going to be getting back into that a little bit more this weekend. So we'll see how that goes. And Josh, as you sort of alluded to, you've been playing a bit of a controversial game for some people.
Yeah, I mean, I started out, I started out the month with Red Dead Online. That was probably what I played during the best part of the month. Now, I'm actually kind of sad about it because I read somewhere that like you couldn't transfer character data from consoles to PC. But I thought for some reason that console to console, like data transfer, because it was Rockstar and it was like a count picker. So I've been playing on my Xbox One knowing that eventually I'm going to try to, secure a PS5. I'm going to switch because a lot of us, Ian and a few of my other friends are all PlayStation users. So I'm going to eventually make the switch. And so I was just, grinding a bit on the character. And then I realized that, I can't transfer data over. So I kind of stopped playing that because eventually when I get on the PS5, I want to, redo the stuff. And I've been putting a lot of effort into it. So I stopped. But the only thing I want to talk about is like the gaming culture is really weird, especially online.
Yeah.
I've had weird interactions. Like these two dudes, like came up on me when I was like hunting or something. And they basically, were inviting me to like a group chat. So I clicked on it and they were like, so what are you doing? Are you hunting? And I was like, yeah, what are you guys doing? And they went, oh crap, you're an adult. You're not a kid. And I was like, that's a weird thing to say to me. Like, why would it matter? And then they proceed to tell me that they hop on and just randomly invite players that they run into chat. And if it ends up being a kid, then they basically will tell the kid that you have 5 minutes to hide and we're going to come and hunt you. And like, and they just they just basically hopped on there just to torment children who were trying to play online. And it's just,
that is just pure
it's
joy.
really interesting. And it kind of reminds me too, because I've recently got a VR headset, the Oculus Quest 2, which has been a lot of fun. And like one of the prominent features of that is the multiplayer gameplay, that you're able to hop on with your friends. And one of the biggest critiques that cracks me up of most of the popular multiplayer games is that you just have a bunch of kids on there just screaming and like going crazy on the Oculus. And so for me, this is kind of like my first introduction to kind of online gameplay. So I wanted to switch back to the old tried and true, like a nice single player experience, not having to deal with the chaos of online. And I decided to get Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, a lot of interesting things going on.
Now, I know Ian could probably catch up a lot of the controversy here. So why don't I just say this? First of all, I ended up getting it for my PC. I have a gaming PC as well. And I looked up the specs that are required and the graphics card and the stuff that I have was recommended to play the game. So I felt comfortable in downloading it because that was like, I guess the PC has been the version that it's been least glitchy on. Yeah. It's still been extremely glitchy. But I mean, for those of us that don't know, that don't even really care, I mean, it's hard not to know at this point. But Ian, you want to fill everybody in just real quick on what's going on with that game and why I say it's controversial?
So, I mean, just a little bit of background. CD Projekt Red, who developed this game, they developed the Witcher series games, which is based on the famous fantasy series, book series. I can't remember the name of the author of that book.
He's a Polish author, though. I know he's Polish, and it's a Polish story.
And they're Polish.
Witcher 3 was fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of people love Witcher 3, and also too, in case everybody, in case people forgot, in 2015 when The Witcher 3 came out, it was also pretty buggy when it first came out, but they fixed it relatively quickly. People didn't really give that much notice to it. But with Cyberpunk 2077, I believe they've been in development of this game since at least 2013, 2014.
Easily 15 years.
15.
I think it was like
Well,
easily.
I don't know.
The concept for
Yeah,
it.
sure.
The
Yeah.
concept
That makes sense. Yeah.
was around for that long.
Definitely. And, they first teased it, at least, I think, in 2013 and 2014, one of those E3 cinematic trailers, this all CG. It was like, okay, cool. Like, this will be cool. When is this game coming out? They're like, sometime. And, and so they were working on it for quite a long while. And it finally came out in 2020 after, like all year, like it was getting delayed. And then famously it was, this has only happened a few times in gaming history, at least in the recent years, is that it went gold. So they finished the game and they were going to send it off to certification, in order to get all the checks necessary before they can publish it out into the wild. And then they had to delay it another few more weeks because there was still problems with it. And, that right there was a sign that like something's up. And,
right.
And of course, leaked copies of it got out into the wild. And so people started playing it in a much worse state than the actual release version of it. And, reviewers got bad copies of it. In fact, it was really interesting is that people who reviewed it on Xbox Series X and PS5 were told not to show off the base PS4 and Xbox One versions of it. They were like, no, we're not going to let you see this. And then also, too, a lot of people were only given PC copies of it. So there was a lot of sort of misleading marketing in how this game was running. And even on PC.
Well, absolutely. They legitimately said, sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to make sure this point's good. They legitimately said that this was going to like be a game for the Xbox One and PS4 series, like not the newest series. And so that was the disappointing part of that's like the two systems that it runs the worst on, and all the different glitches. And so it's been what now there's lawsuits with the investors of the game, and all this different stuff that they're facing. And, I kind of feel roughly a little bit bad because I feel like, yes, it's glitchy. I mean, there's things with it, eventually, I'm super stoked for you to eventually play it.
Yeah, definitely. I want to
kind of get your thoughts on it because I know you will.
Yeah.
Because don't get me wrong, the story's kind of engaging and it's kind of fun. I know it's a quick main storyline. The only thing that I would say is like, yes, it's super glitchy. The fun part is this is the only game that I've ever had to choose my penis, which was pretty fascinating.
I'm sure.
So there is
really
definitely
fascinating because like you're probably sick of like your micro penis, right? So you got to make just the biggest penis.
Of course, everybody's going to do that, whatever you make. But it's
you also
definitely
make yourself
more
like a hermaphrodite or intersex in the game as well.
I don't know. I don't really know much about that. I do know that it's definitely like the ads in there. It's definitely adult content. Sure. I mean, The Witcher was pretty adult. Let's be fair. But it's very adult content. And for me, the only thing I'll say is like the city is really fun. The futuristic aspect and the the weapons are cool. They shoot really cool. It's good feeling, the good controller vibration and everything else. The only thing that I would say is it's still really, really glitchy. Where I'll have like, you'll go to do something and your character will freeze and it's stuck. Like it'll think, you zoom in and you can't sprint and then it'll be stuck and zoom in no matter what you do. Like you have to like go to somewhere else to pop yourself out of it. There's cutscenes or you'll do a quest and you'll grab the right material and then it won't register that you did it. So like it'll still show the icon that you need to do it, but it's already looted. So I've had a few instances of that. So for me, always be saving. That's my joke. Like they have a quick save function. I always save. So if something goes awry, I just revert back. But it's annoying to have to focus on that. And, and some of the quests, the side quests, they're a little repetitive. A lot of the things you do. Now for me as a grinder, who wants to make money and just keep grinding the same stuff, I'm happy. It learns the game. I'm leveling. Like I'm cool.
Yeah, for sure.
There's just like The Witcher 3, there is so much loot, loot. A lot of it's hard to decipher and go through. It's easy to make money. They have like little like pods everywhere, like that are stationed throughout the map that you can just stop at and sell your shit. And clear your inventory. And so there's aspects of it that are great, but it's definitely some of the glitches have been absolutely hilarious. I mean, the best one is that anytime you call your car over, you have like a button to call your car to you. 9 times out of 10, if you're standing in the road, your car just fucking runs into you, like just knocks you.
That's great. What? There was one question I wanted to.
Pretty sure that's
one question I wanted to ask you about it is about the world itself in Night City. Like, does it feel one big enough that you can sort of get lost in, or like is it in depth enough to where it keeps you interested and engaged? Like, do you keep finding new little pockets of areas in the world, or have you at this point like pretty much explored everything?
No, I have not explored everything, and it's been great. And I will say, I'm only through. I think there's 3 acts. I'm only through Act 1, so I just got to I finished the act where the title screen appears. It's pretty far into the game before you get the title screen, and then everything starts to open up. So it's definitely more. They have like a cell phone function. It's really interesting. You can tell that there's a lot of obviously Rockstar style game influence. You can tell. One thing that kind of bothers me though is that the mini map is in the top right hand corner.
Oh.
And so like when you're trying to drive and look at the street, it's kind of annoying to constantly have to look up at the top corner to see where you need to turn. Like it would be and again, maybe it's because it's a Rockstar trope, but it would be way better on the bottom to where you can see it through your peripherals instead of having to look up at the top to where you're turning. Story's engaging and there's a lot of different stuff to it that's really happening, but it is moving quick. And so, and you can tell like with The Witcher, the thing that was great about that game is that the side quests were detailed. They had a lot of, way of basically narrative that are attached to them. And these are not quite as detailed. You get a phone call, it'll say, hey, we need you to do this. You'll grab an item and then you're done. Just the other day, I finally did one that was a little bit different and I was like, oh, this is a little bit different, but they all follow the same structure. They're all pretty easy. They're not very complicated to dive into, but there's definitely a plethora of stuff to do. And, obviously the NPCs they're not as fluid as a Rockstar game would be. The police are funny. Like there's like the way that the structure is of how they attack you. It's like, if you end up aggravating the police, it's like, they just stop hunting for you super fast. Like you just like get out of range. You're like, fuck it.
You're like, yeah. We got more other important things to do.
But I usually don't play games as a bad guy, so I'm not quite sure. I'm not like you who will just run in and shoot everybody. But that's mainly what it is. A lot of quests are you get an area on your map. There's a bunch of dudes there. You got to kill all the dudes, and then you collect whatever, and then you're done.
Interesting.
For side missions, it's very much repetitive in that regard, but it is visually beautiful. You can tell that they're already coming out with patches, and hopefully, like you said with The Witcher, my plan is that like eventually these kinks will be ironed out, and hopefully it'll turn out to be a pretty impressive game. And they already promised that the first DLC that they drop will be free for everybody.
I did hear about that. That's really good on them to do that. I think that definitely saves them a little bit of pain. And yeah, I mean, I definitely plan on picking it up, but I was going to pick it up on PS4, but then after it was released and I saw the problems with it, I was like, I'll just wait. And, if I can get my hands on a PS5 in the next, 3 months, then I'll probably most likely be playing that on there as well. So.
And you were smart to wait because they pulled them from each store, the Xbox store and the PlayStation Online. Right. You can't download the games now.
Yeah.
So
all right,
yeah, we'll see. But no, it's an impressive game, and for what it is, and like hopefully it'll be better. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing.
So. Well, great. Well, Josh, first of all, thanks for joining me on this episode. Maybe I'll convince you to come back next month, but we'll see if everybody likes this. And so, we'll see everybody next month. And I can't wait to talk about what we've been reading. I'm the next book I'm reading is something I've been wanting to get to for a long time. So,
nice. That'll be All
awesome. Right. Well,
thanks for tuning in, guys. See you guys. Bye.
See you in January or February. See you, folks.
See ya.